What if a simple letter, buried among a pile of bills and invitations, held the power to change lives? What if a world-famous actor, known for his kindness, stumbled upon a plea for help hidden in ink and paper? Would he ignore it, dismissing it as just another fan letter, or would he feel the weight of the words tugging at his heart? When Keanu Reeves receives an invitation to a small orphanage charity event, he almost sets it aside. But then, a heartfelt letter from a former foster child strikes a chord deep within him. Could his presence truly make a difference? Or would he uncover a hidden darkness, one that demands far more than just a celebrity visit? Join us in reflecting on this true story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for more daily stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you are watching, for we would love to hear from you. Keanu Reeves returned home later than usual, the hush of his quiet house greeting him as he pushed the door open. He had spent the entire day juggling meetings, script read-throughs, and a charity dinner that ran much longer than anyone had anticipated. Fatigue weighed on him, but he shrugged off his jacket, set his keys on the nearby table, and headed into the kitchen. There, a week's worth of mail beckoned for his attention. He poured himself a small glass of whiskey, hoping the soothing warmth might ease his tired mind, and settled at the table with the mail pile. Bills, advertisements, and mundane flyers made up most of the stack. Yet, among the routine envelopes, a modest, unmarked one captured his eye. Sliding a finger beneath its flap, he discovered an invitation from a small place called Haven Hills Children's Home, located in Orange County. They were hosting a charity event and hoped he could attend as a special guest. Keanu set the invitation aside, making a mental note to discuss it with his manager, Patrick. The next morning, exhaustion tugged at him, but curiosity led him to keep sifting through the remaining envelopes. Inside another envelope lay a heartfelt letter from someone named Merida Lafayette. She described her experience growing up in the foster care system, expressing how his film roles had provided glimmers of hope on her darkest days. Merida wrote that orphan kids often felt invisible in a world obsessed with political scandals and celebrity gossip. With quiet sincerity, she thanked him for unknowingly offering her solace. Struck by the raw honesty of Merida's words, Keanu felt an ache in his chest, recalling the invitation from Haven Hills. He had always believed in using his platform for kindness, whether big or small. Deciding to prioritize this invitation rather than letting it drown in an ocean of appointments, he resolved to check with Patrick about making time in his schedule. He set down his half-finished whiskey, suddenly determined to do something meaningful. The next morning arrived with California sunshine streaming through his windows. Keanu woke up to his phone buzzing with various alerts and messages that required immediate attention. He scanned the notifications: a breakfast meeting with a potential director, a costume fitting for an upcoming action film, a lunch interview with a high-profile magazine, and an afternoon script reading. As he reviewed these obligations, the image of Merida's letter lingered in his mind. He refused to ignore it. Reaching out to Patrick, he inquired if they had received any official notice from Haven Hills. Patrick, as always, had the detailed schedule at the ready. When asked about the orphanage invitation, Patrick hesitated. He admitted that he had known about it, but, given Keanu's packed schedule, had assumed it was a lower priority. "It's small," Patrick insisted, "and you've got so many big commitments." He sounded apologetic, yet unpersuaded that it deserved the star's attention. From a purely strategic standpoint, Patrick's stance made sense. A small event held at a modest orphanage was unlikely to gain major media coverage. But Keanu couldn't brush off the guilt. Merida's heartfelt letter spoke to something personal, reminding him how much even small acts of empathy could matter. Despite Patrick's insistence, Keanu felt drawn to visit Haven Hills. His manager, concerned about time, advised that a more private, scheduled meeting later would be more practical. But practicality was overshadowed by the tugging in Keanu's chest. He found himself clinging to the idea that if the orphanage had cared enough to reach out, it might truly need someone's help. After mulling it over, he momentarily conceded to Patrick's view and left for his regular schedule. However, A chance moment that day shifted his perspective once more. At his usual morning cafe, he overheard two people lamenting how often society forgets about orphans and the elderly, particularly if there's no immediate scandal. Their conversation echoed Merida's letter, making it impossible for Keanu to ignore the orphanage any longer. Right then and there, he called Patrick again and said, "Clear my morning. I'm going to Haven Hills." Keanu slipped behind the wheel and started the drive toward Orange County, where the Haven Hills Children's Home was tucked away. With each mile, the glossy skyscrapers of Hollywood gave way to neighborhoods, and then suburban streets yielded to more rural roads. The sign welcoming visitors to Haven Hills was a small, faded placard featuring a sun partly hidden by clouds. Turning onto the gravel lot, he parked near a modest, two-story building that seemed to wear its age visibly: peeling paint, sagging steps, and patches of overgrown weeds encroaching on a forgotten flower bed. Stepping through the front door, Keanu was startled by the orphanage's silence. An empty reception desk stood with a thin layer of dust. It was hardly the organized scene he expected for a public event. Approaching a dimly lit corridor, he glanced into a small playroom with a circular window on the door. Inside were two young black girls, each appearing around 10 years old, huddled together in near darkness. Their faces seemed weighed down by sadness, and a faint flush on their arms reached as high as their ears. Keanu felt his heart twist, unsure why children would be kept in such isolation. Suddenly, a voice from behind broke the stillness. A man in a slightly oversized suit hurried over, wearing a flustered expression. He introduced himself as Victor Langford, the director and owner of Haven Hills. "Mr. Reeves, I'm sorry we weren't expecting you," he said with a forced smile, explaining that the orphanage was short-staffed. He led Keanu away from the dimly lit room, insisting the two girls were quarantined with the flu. Something in Victor's demeanor felt off, too smooth, too eager to usher Keanu elsewhere. He was promptly taken to a cheerier playroom filled mostly with white children, bright decor, and a rainbow of toys. Local media outlets had set up their cameras there, capturing footage of this seemingly uplifting setting. Victor guided Keanu around, pointing out each area: the dining hall with mismatched tables, the small book nook lined with tattered paperbacks, and the bedrooms filled with bunk beds crammed tight. Although Victor painted a picture of dedication and resourcefulness, Keanu couldn't forget the sorrowful faces of the two isolated girls. Victor steered him back to the main area, where a couple of reporters snapped photos. Acting as though everything was normal, he suggested capturing a donation moment on camera, which Keanu obliged by writing a generous check. The flashes went off, and reporters scrawled notes. Yet, deep in Keanu's gut, suspicion brewed. Where was the sign of this flu outbreak? Why did those two girls look so apprehensive, and why did the rest of the children seem so separate from them? When Keanu, in front of the cameras, casually asked to visit the quarantined room so he could highlight any neglected space in the orphanage, Victor went pale. He offered half-hearted warnings about infection risks, but Keanu was insistent. Reluctantly, Victor led him and a small press contingent back down the hall. The corridor felt colder this time. Victor cracked open the door to reveal the two young girls as they shrank against the wall under the sudden burst of light. Their arms showed red patches as if they'd been burned or irritated, not just flushed with fever. Kneeling beside them, Keanu gently asked their names. One timidly whispered, "I'm Amaya. This is my sister, Alana." Their frightened gazes flicked to Victor, who hovered nearby. Keanu noticed they didn't have coughs, runny noses, or any real sign of illness. Rather, they looked underfed and deeply stressed. When reporters requested a few pictures, Victor's grip on the girl's shoulders was visibly tense. Keanu's phone vibrated, interrupting the moment. It was his manager, Patrick, reminding him of another pressing engagement. The orphanage had already consumed precious hours from a schedule that wasn't designed for surprises. But as Keanu ended the call and returned to the scene, he caught sight of how quickly the girls scurried back to their corner the instant Victor's attention was elsewhere. Their eyes, filled with both terror and hope, set Keanu's resolve. He left the orphanage feeling uneasy, having no concrete proof of wrongdoing, but sensing deep in his bones that something was terribly amiss. The drive back toward Hollywood was supposed to be routine, yet Keanu's mind was anything but calm. He kept picturing Amaya and Alana's haunted expressions and the tense grip Victor had on their arms. Halfway home, Keanu suddenly remembered he had neglected to retrieve a copy of his donation check, official documentation he always kept for charitable accounting. Initially, it seemed like a small oversight, but it offered the perfect excuse to return and investigate further. Pulling off to the side of the road, Keanu made a firm decision. Over the phone, he asked Patrick to clear the rest of the day, explaining only that the orphanage visit demanded his immediate attention. Despite Patrick's frustration, Keanu knew he couldn't ignore the urgency building inside him. Every mile he covered on the return trip felt charged with apprehension. A cold sense of dread clung to him, urging him forward. Upon arriving back at Haven Hills, a stark change in atmosphere was immediately apparent. Afternoon clouds cast heavy shadows over the structure, emphasizing the peeling paint and shabby exterior. There was no friendly greeting in the foyer this time. Instead, distant crashes and muffled cries echoed from a back corridor. Keanu's pulse quickened, abandoning all caution. He followed the sounds until a male staffer suddenly blocked his path, eyes filled with nervous tension. "Mr. Reeves, you really shouldn't be here," the staffer stammered. "This area is off-limits. Kitchen's busy, and Victor," he was cut off by the unexpected appearance of an older woman holding a broom. Her name tag read Merida Lafayette, and her voice quavered slightly as she addressed the man. "Kevin, let him pass," she insisted, raising the broom in warning. "We can't hide this anymore." Taking advantage of the distraction, Keanu hurried past them. Rounding a corner into the industrial kitchen, he froze in horror. Victor loomed over Amaya and Alana, fury twisting his features. Nearby, several other children stood by, witnessing the outburst with terrified eyes. In a frenzy, Victor was shouting hateful slurs, turning his rage on the two girls. The tension in the room was palpable, as if everyone's hearts were pounding loud enough to echo against the walls. "What on earth is happening here?" Keanu demanded, taking a step forward and positioning himself protectively between Victor and the cowering twins. Victor spun around, shock flickering across his face before he attempted to cover with a forced, venomous laugh. "Mr. Reeves," he said through gritted teeth, "this isn't what you think." But Keanu had seen enough. The children's fearful reactions spoke louder than any excuses Victor might cook up. Desperate, Victor tried to claim the twins had broken quarantine, making them a danger to others. His words, however, dripped with a racist contempt he could no longer hide. One small boy in the back bravely spoke up, admitting that Amaya and Alana weren't really sick. "They've never been allowed in the main playroom," he mumbled, glancing at Keanu for validation. Keanu faced Victor, voice low and controlled, but laced with anger. "These are children. They deserve care and respect. You're abusing them." Victor's retort was a mixture of arrogance and panic. He claimed he was under constant stress, that the orphanage lacked funds, and that these twins caused the most trouble. But his excuses disintegrated with every fearful glance from the kids. With no hesitation, Keanu took out his phone and dialed 911. "You have no right," Victor shouted, eyes wild with desperation. "I've run this place for years. No one will believe you." Keanu continued talking to the emergency operator, giving the address and describing an urgent situation of child abuse and neglect. Victor's fury escalated. He lunged toward a pot of boiling water on the stove, apparently intending to lash out in one final violent act. Keanu yelled for the children to back away, ending the call to intervene. But the wail of approaching sirens outside cut through Victor's rage, making him hesitate. Police officers swarmed in moments later, disarming the situation and pulling Victor away. As they slapped handcuffs on him, He shouted obscenities and threatened lawsuits. The children, frozen in shock, began to sob. Some scrambled for the door. Others clung to one another. In that instant, Keanu realized how crucial his return visit had been. Without it, this terror could have dragged on indefinitely. The swirl of red and blue police lights turned the orphanage lawn into a scene of stark contrasts. Officers hurried in and out, some interviewing staff, others checking each room. A team of social workers arrived soon after, armed with notepads and comforting words. They dispersed, gently guiding children outside to safety. From his vantage point near the steps, Keanu watched as the traumatized group of kids emerged, wide-eyed and clinging to one another for security. Among them, Amaya and Alana stayed close to Keanu's side, as if he were their one lifeline in a rapidly changing world. They looked small and frail, their red-marked arms revealing years of mistreatment rather than any sign of the flu. One of the social workers, Lorraine, approached, speaking in a soothing voice and explaining that the state would find emergency placements for all these children. Amaya stared at the ground, voice barely audible. "Where will we go?" Alana's trembling hand sought her sister's, not wanting them to be separated. Seeing their fear, Keanu's heart ached. He gently placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "You'll be taken care of. I promise," he said, aware that promises can seem empty to kids who've known betrayal. Still, his sincerity shone through, and they seemed to find a measure of comfort. Meanwhile, the authorities led Victor out of the building in handcuffs. His face twisted with unmasked hatred, he glared at Keanu. "You'll pay for this." "Reeves," he spat, straining against the officers. "I've got friends, lawyers, but nobody was listening now." The door of the squad car closed, muffling his threats. The desperate bravado that once controlled this orphanage had collapsed. The faint whiff of sour fear lingered in the air where Victor once stood. Keanu refocused on the children. He knelt, meeting Amaya and Alana at eye level. "Listen," he began, voice calm and reassuring. "You're going to a safe place. There might be paperwork, interviews, but I'll do what I can so you won't be alone." At the mention of possibly being placed with strangers, Alana's eyes brimmed with tears. "Don't let them separate us," she pleaded. Keanu glanced at Lorraine, who shook her head with compassionate understanding. "We keep siblings together whenever possible," she said quietly, "especially in emergencies. I promise we'll do our best." As evening shadows lengthened, vehicles pulled up, designated to take children into temporary foster care. Some of the older kids wore numb expressions, as if trauma had taught them not to expect much. The younger ones sobbed or clung to the few caregivers who had shown them kindness. Throughout it all, Keanu stayed with the twins, escorting them to a social worker's car. He helped buckle them into the back seat, gently brushing back Alana's hair, trying to offer any semblance of peace. "Will we ever see you again?" Amaya asked, voice trembling with emotion. Keanu nodded resolutely. "I'm not abandoning you," he said firmly. "You have my word." He paused, letting her see the honesty in his eyes. "I'll find a way to keep in touch. We'll make sure everything turns out better than before." The social worker thanked him and closed the door. Keanu stepped back, watching the twins peer out the rear window. Their uncertain gazes tugged at his heart. The car's engine rumbled to life, and off they went, two small figures carrying heavy emotional scars, hopefully heading toward safer tomorrows. The entire ordeal felt both abrupt and painfully overdue. Taking a deep breath, Keanu turned around, only to spot Merida Lafayette on the orphanage steps. She looked exhausted, but relief shone through her eyes. Slowly approaching her, Keanu offered a nod. "Thank you," he said, voice lowered to convey gratitude. "You helped me see what was happening. Your letter guided me here." Tears glinted at the corners of Merida's eyes. "I've been praying for someone to come," she whispered. "I tried to raise concern, but no one listened. Not until you." Keanu placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing, and now I want to do more. I can't just walk away knowing these kids have nowhere stable to call home." He paused, glancing over the old, tattered walls. "My manager can help me figure out the logistics. but I plan to purchase this place, fix it, and make sure no child endures what they did under Victor. Merida blinked, astonished. You're serious? He nodded. Dead serious, he responded. If you're willing, I'd love your help. Nobody understands a system like someone who's been through it. She let out a shaky breath, offering a brave, hopeful smile. Count me in. In that moment, the battered orphanage behind them felt less like a monument to neglect and more like a symbol of possible renewal. The day after the rescue unfolded in a blur of phone calls, consultations, and urgent legal arrangements. Keanu, settled in the quiet corner of his living room, spoke with his trusted friend and advisor, Michael, who had quickly begun researching the ownership structure of Haven Hills Children's Home. By mid-afternoon, Michael confirmed the orphanage was, indeed, privately held by Victor. Charges against Victor for child endangerment and abuse meant legal hurdles, but Keanu was determined. Discussing the logistics, Keanu laid out his vision. We need new staff, proper funding, and real oversight. These kids deserve something more than a quick Band-Aid fix. As if on cue, Merida Lafayette called him to confirm she'd cooperate with social workers to testify against Victor. She also vowed to assist in rebuilding the orphanage once legal proceedings allowed. Her bravery moved Keanu profoundly, reminding him of the letter that first stirred his conscience. Before finalizing any steps, Keanu visited the children, now placed in temporary foster homes. He tracked down the addresses through the social workers, ensuring everything was done with official permission. With each home he visited, he offered words of reassurance and listened to the children's stories. In quiet living rooms or small backyards, he kneeled down to meet them at eye level, answering their questions about what would happen next. It wasn't easy. Some were frightened, unsure if they could trust adults ever again. Yet, Keanu's sincere compassion earned him smiles and tentative hope. Amaya and Alana's foster placement was no exception. When he arrived, they clung to each other near the door. Although their new foster caretaker seemed kind, they were shaken by the sudden upheaval. Keanu gently knelt and spoke softly. I'm working on taking over Haven Hills. When everything is sorted out, you won't have to go back to that terrible situation. Instead, you'll have a new, safe home. The twins exchanged a look that combined relief and guarded optimism. They had spent years under suspicion, so trust did not come easily. In the days that followed, Michael hammered out preliminary negotiations to buy out the property. While authorities conducted their criminal investigation, Victor's ownership rights were frozen. Keanu arranged to cover the facility's debts and hire interim caregivers recommended by Child Protective Services. A sense of progress began to bloom, though it was heavily tempered by the legal complexities. Patrick, initially skeptical, saw the depth of Keanu's resolve and came around to offering full support. He took over scheduling calls with lawyers, accountants, and local government agencies, allowing Keanu more time to consult with child welfare experts and psychologists. Each day, Keanu uncovered new insights into how orphan care should be conducted, how to ensure emotional and educational needs were met, how to secure ongoing community involvement, and how to ward off the dangers of a single, controlling owner repeating the horrors they had just exposed. Press interest inevitably grew, though Keanu had hoped to keep the story discreet. Word leaked about his interventions at the orphanage. Journalists reached out for interviews. Tabloids buzzed with headlines about Keanu Reeves saving the day. Rather than exploit the spotlight, Keanu stayed focused on legalities and child welfare, declining to sensationalize the story. In every statement he issued, he emphasized the children's plight and asked for broader support for all orphanages lacking resources. Bit by bit, the puzzle came together. The staff who had remained silent under Victor's tyranny stepped forward to give accounts. Several community members volunteered to help in any way they could, donating toys, books, or time. Keanu's circle of friends and colleagues also chimed in with offers to fundraise or spread awareness. Despite the heartbreak that sparked this chain of events, something hopeful had emerged, a collective effort rallying around these kids. One late evening, Keanu found himself standing in front of Haven Hills once again. Armed with a flashlight, he wandered the premises, thinking of all the ways it could be refurbished. Hallways could be brightened with fresh paint, the decrepit play area replaced with a safe, cheerful space for reading and games. A proper garden could flourish outside, allowing children to learn about nature. Dreaming about these changes, he felt renewed determination. The building might be aging, but its walls could stand witness to healing instead of hurt. Returning to his car, Keanu let the hush of the night settle over him. Tomorrow would bring more legal steps, more phone calls. But with each passing day, he was building the foundation for something lasting. These children, especially Amaya and Alana, would see that sometimes, if the right people care enough to show up, a place of despair can transform into a haven worthy of its name. In the aftermath of Victor's arrest and the orphanage's rescue, the story of Haven Hills reached a pivotal turning point. No longer was it simply an old building hiding desperate secrets. It was on the path to becoming a renewed home where every child could feel safe. Keanu Reeves' resolve served as the catalyst, ensuring no future generation of children would silently endure neglect in those corridors. With the unwavering help of Merida Lafayette, social workers, and dedicated volunteers, the orphanage's mission was redefined: to nurture each child equally, providing the care and compassion they deserve from start. Though the legal and financial complexities required time, Keanu's steadfast pledge to purchase Haven Hills signaled genuine hope. Professionals volunteered their expertise, from education and healthcare to renovation and fundraising. Amaya and Alana, alongside the other children, started down a path of healing, secure in their foster placements until Haven Hills officially reopened under new leadership. Their journey would not be easy, but they had finally escaped the shadow of cruelty. In the months ahead, Haven Hills began slowly transforming. Where once the paint peeled and mistrust prevailed, bright colors and open play spaces emerged. The sound of children's laughter replaced fearful silence. Ultimately, the real triumph was in seeing those kids rediscover their sense of worth. Their stories, no longer hidden, resonated far beyond the orphanage's walls. And so, what began as a single invitation, a modest envelope buried in a pile of mail, unfolded into a profound act of intervention. Keanu had listened to a plea, risked his own comfort and schedule, and seized the chance to protect vulnerable lives. That choice changed everything, allowing Haven Hills to finally live up to its name. A place of true refuge and healing for all who crossed its threshold.